Wow, that was so beautiful and really touching. Thank you for sharing that with us, Debbie. And guys, I want to take this opportunity. This is so unique to have both of you on our show and to address something that's so important to our society, especially these days. And I would like to give you the opportunity now to express some of your experience being a woman trombonist, being an African-American trombonist, classical musicians in a field that's so restricted and so misunderstood often. You know, we see and we understand that society is evolving and we have made improvement, but there is still such a long way to go towards equality, towards equal opportunities. So I would like to ask both of you, perhaps starting with you, Debbie, what has been your experience, you know, these last decades as a professional classical musician, and what were the challenges that you faced? And can you share some of your experiences?
Certainly, thank you. Well, I want to begin by saying that my time in the New Mexico Symphony and the New Mexico Philharmonic has been beautiful. I have not felt issues ever in relation to being a woman trombone player. I was just a trombone player, the principal. So that was really, I want to start by saying that. It was a beautiful experience, all the years I spent in the symphony and now the Philharmonic. From the beginning, I thought about what to say on this topic. I think I won't talk about the time that I was not allowed to audition for an orchestra, that I was excluded because I was a woman. One of those...
Really?
Yeah, an orchestra in Italy where it was sort of a personal connection thing to get into the audition. And my teacher was told very directly that the woman was not to audition. But I won't talk about that. And I won't talk about the other audition where I was the runner-up and found out only years later that the music director vetoed all of the musicians, and they clearly thought that he did not want to have a woman principal trombonist in his orchestra. But I'll tell you the happy ending story. When I auditioned for the Grant Park Symphony in Chicago, it was a big audition, a very long day. It was one of the happiest days of my life. I went home and was thrilled and was about to start the season in the summer. I moved to Chicago for the summer and started hearing from musicians about stories about the principal trombonist not being happy that I was hired. And eventually the story came out, and eventually the principal spoke to me very apologetically, I should say. And what had happened is when the screen came down, when there were only 4 finalists, he quite definitively told the director, "We're not going to hire a woman trombone player. We're not going to hire that woman." And a big argument broke out. And as he told me later, he finally realized that he could not go home after the audition and tell his wife that they hired the second best player because that was a man. So when the finals occurred, he said he listened and realized he had to hire the best player, no question, and I won the audition. And I played with that orchestra for 15 summers and had a great relationship with the principal trombonist. So that's the happy ending story, and I'm very much admired that man for facing his prejudice and opening his mind.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh my God. Congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah. And Darren, to you now.
Well, prior to joining the São Paulo State Symphony, I also had an audition experience that sort of opened my eyes to a reality that, of course, that we were all made aware of, and that was auditioning for an orchestra where I arrived at the finals as the only finalist, and essentially was told that the conductor and that the majority of the principal players who were on the committee all basically agreed and wanted me to join the orchestra. However, quite ironically, because I am such a, I would say, a supporter and endorser of female performers in general in this profession, because one of my first instructors for trombone was Katie Nichols, who is a female trombonist that I studied with for 5 years in my most influential times. And if it weren't for her, I would not have met Douglas Yo, who was my first bass trombone instructor, and so on and so forth. So, I was sort of surprised. Actually, in my experience, it was actually a female principal trombonist who denied me of a win that, according to the conductor and the majority of the people there, thought that I should have won. And I only know this from the musicians themselves, and also from the conductor, from his words. So that was rather unusual. And in this case, this was an orchestra that was not a U.S. based orchestra. It was a European based orchestra. But the trombonist in question was actually coincidentally a white female trombonist. And this was really quite odd, because this has to be, for sure in my lifetime, the only time that I would have been at odds with any female trombonist anywhere, because I'm usually the first person to raise the cheerleading signs, and basically applauding and so looking forward to seeing them, because I feel like that we're part of the same community, as minorities basically in this profession. So that was my experience. And that said, I did win the bass trombone principal position with São Paulo State Symphony in New York, and that the audition took place in New York, and there was a screen for from the beginning until the final round, of which also I was the only candidate that made it to the finals. So and I always tell people that I think that I was very fortunate, because I heard also years later from one of my colleagues that when he had inquired to prospective candidates that they would possibly hear in New York, a certain name or names were brought up, and of course my name was not included in those. And I think that if we had not had the screen, I would have probably fallen victim as so many others who don't come from either a musician's family, don't come from, a sort of a larger, school circle of, colleagues and whatnot. And of course, the thing as far as being, African-American is, that's just another, aspect that obviously works against, sometimes if they have an opportunity to judge before, you're able to play a single note. So that was my experience. And my happy ending is that I've been 22 years in the São Paulo State Symphony, which is now, we have a foundation as of 2005. And I'm honored that actually to be here. You, Roberto, you were one of the first individuals that I met outside of the orchestra rehearsal that I attended. My very first orchestra rehearsal that I attended when I arrived in São Paulo. I was perusing around the hall and I ran into you in one of the balconies. And, and since you and I have met, I have to just say, well, one, I miss you, brother. I miss you, being there with us. And it's always been a wonderful experience, there at the orchestra. As far as my life here in Brazil, I couldn't ask for anything, more in terms of the personal relations, family relations that have been built, the colleagueship. Inside the orchestra, I have never been treated with anything less than absolute, respect, kindness, and friendship, from our family, the people, inside of our organization. but of course, I have had some unpleasant experiences, and coincidentally, I, for the first time in my long tenure here, I took issue with the fact, and I took realization of the fact that our organization perhaps should do more to try to influence diversity. Um, uh, and it was actually as a result of running into an usher in our hall who actually tried to kick me out of the hall as I was attending another concert. And that experience actually, which was I made public, and on purpose, because it was not about the usher themselves. I mean, everyone has had a bad experience with an usher, but in my case, what happened, it made me reflect on the fact that this usher particularly was not used to seeing my kind even in the hall. And the fact is that even though, I would agree with what you said, Roberto, Brazil is a great melting pot, perhaps even more of a great melting pot than the United States, for sure. And the people are treated better overall down here. But of course, there are pockets, and that's what happened. And it made me reflect on things. And I did take this up with the direction of our organization, starting at the president of the board, as well as the directors. I basically said to them, I didn't want anything to happen to the usher, but I thought it would be important for us to reflect on what our public sees. Because if the public doesn't see an example of diversity, then obviously the people who work for us, such as the ushers, they will not have that expectation either to see people of diverse backgrounds in the hall in certain instances. And also it doesn't help, or it doesn't bode well to encourage the next generation of minorities if they also never get to see people of females and and blacks being in positions of responsibility or importance.
It's so important to speak out and to really approach these incidents so they can stop and they cannot happen again. And orchestras in Brazil, in the case of your orchestra, the State Symphony Orchestra, or my orchestra, which is the Opera House, these are fully funded by government. So we try to keep the price of the tickets very affordable, so we have access to anybody can really have access to concerts. So in a way, anybody that wishes to come to a concert here is able to, because to come to a concert is it costs you as much as going to the movie theater. So, which is a great thing. In New Mexico, we have this pass for students that we allowed students to buy tickets for the entire season for very, very affordable prices. So now we're starting to see in Albuquerque, a younger crowd, very diverse crowds of young people coming to the concerts, and they're enjoying each time more, because people sometimes they don't realize how much they like classical music, and they didn't know it, right? Yeah. So it's important to make it accessible to everyone. And I'm so happy that you share these stories with us. And now, on another note, I would like for you to share some of the fun stories that you have been through, in your careers, in your travels, playing as orchestral players or solo players. But before that, Darren, we're going to hear another of one of your videos. Tell us which one is this that we're going to listen to now.
So basically, I thought that we could try a piece by Halsey Stevens. He's a North American composer. And this is the first movement of his sonatina for bass trombone and piano. So And I'm performing with Deborah Fernandez Nilsson. She's my dual partner in Duo das Americas.
Wonderful. Let's watch that right now. So now, guys, we have the opportunity to share some of our fun stories and experiences. So let's start with Debbie. Can you tell us something extravagant that has happened to you all these years in your professional experience?
I certainly can. When I think back to the New Mexico Symphony years, one concert stands out singularly in my memory, and that was a performance of Bolero with David Lockington as music director. It was on a series called David's Follies, where kind of a classical comedy concert. And it was a series of concerts that he did over a period of time. And when we played Bolero, he thought it would be great.
That sounds dangerous. That sounds dangerous already.
Yeah. So when we played Bolero, David Lockington decided it would be a great time to raise money for the Musicians Fund. And so in the performance, and we knew this was going to happen, but we didn't know quite how it would go. Before starting the piece, he introduced to the audience the concept of how many hours all of the wind and percussion players practice over how many years and decades to be able to play Bolero well. And so he said, I think since the musicians have been practicing for months and months on this piece, maybe we should pass the hat. So around the audience, they started passing the hat. And between each of the solos, as you know, is a 2-bar vamp. And so David Lockington would get off the podium, turn around, talk to the audience and say, well, now we have the flute solo. Well, now we have the English horn solo. And so he would ask for another round of the hat between each of the solos. The audience thought it was hysterical. They were given money. It was loose and fun. And I was sitting there terrified because for 7 minutes you don't play a thing. And then you have the trombone solo beginning on a high B flat. So under normal circumstances, this is the most stressful a trombone player will be. Most stressed, I should say, a trombonist will get, is when they're getting ready to play bolero. So when it came time for the trombone solo, David Lockington turned around and said, well, the trombone solo is the most challenging of all the solos in this piece, so you need to give it up for Debra Taylor. And the audience started throwing money off the balcony. And all these dollar bills were just raining down, fluttering down from the balcony. And then he turned around and it was my turn to play.
Oh my God.
And so that was an exercise in focus. Laser focus. Laser focus.
That's an amazing story. Oh my God, I'm gonna do that every time I conduct bolero now.
And I have to say, it went well. I was very pleased with my bolero, which is good because I think they made a lot of money for the musicians' fund.
Wow.
That's excellent.
Cheers.
Well done. Well
Yeah,
done. Well done, Lockington. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We have to do that again sometime, Debbie, so we can just relive the moment. Would you be up for it?
We'll see. I'll reserve judgment. I was going to try to provide the recording, the video, but we couldn't quite get it in time for tonight.
Of that performance?
Yes.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. Okay, please just let us know when you have it. We'll be glad to show it here.
Okay.
Fantastic. Darren, how about you?
Well, I think the most hilarious and unusual occurrence that just is ingrained in my memory has to be the time when the São Paulo State Symphony was participating in the International Winter Festival of Campos do Jordão, of which you were the music director. And so our then artistic director and chief conductor at the time, John Neschling, was, of course, supposed to lead one of the concerts at the festival, and you were as well. The programming had two conductors. And so I think at this moment, it was decided that the two of you were splitting the program. And so then at the end, this genius idea developed that the two of you would conduct a piece together. Now, under normal circumstances, of course, that would be, quite a challenge. And I would say, given the stark and I would say extreme contrast of conducting styles between the two of you, it was let's just say a memorable moment for all of the orchestra. And so when we started, I remember that the first thing that I noticed was the preparation was different between the two of you. And at that moment, when we saw the preparation, I closed my eyes. And and so it's somewhere in the middle of the first line, the second trombonist leans over to me. This is Alex Tartaglia. And he says to me, "Which conductor are you following?" So that was, I think that was, and I must say though, only in Brazil, we have this saying in the US, you've probably heard it already, that people say, only in America. But I think that there's some things that only in Brazil could happen. And I think that this was one of them.
You know, the jovial nature, the possibilities to have fun. You know, the two of you have, you know, I think was just genius. It was a lot of fun, and but it was.
I have to say, Darren, I have absolutely no recollection of that concert.
Yeah,
so it probably was pretty bad because I must, you know, for me to delete something from my memories, it was probably not a very good thing.
Well, there were 95 witnesses.
What was the piece, by the way?
You know, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was actually the. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was the hymn. I think it was the national anthem.
Oh my God. Okay. All right.
So
okay, for that you don't need a conductor. You know, you can just play it along. But you know, just be honest. You do that quite often. You just close your eyes and just play, right? All right, guys, this has been a tremendous show. Thank you so much for participating, Debbie Taylor, Darren Millen. You know, you're great fun, wonderful players. You have my utmost respect, and I miss being able to perform with you guys. So I hope that one of these days we can be together again and just have fun with music. Congratulations on both of your great careers, and congratulations on, you know, being so strong, so positive. And we need more people like you in our business, in our society. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone that's participating with us tonight. It's been a great show. I'll see you guys next week with another New Mexico Philharmonic's Wednesday Night Live. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
This was such a pleasure. Thank you.